Okay, hello. Let's get everything going at once here. All right, we're recording. Hello, and welcome to the Honey Tea Podcast, where we talk all things the tea with a bit of honey. My name is Melissa, your host, and today we will be talking about um, reflecting. Yep, so that's what's come up for me. Um, for the actual video, so today I'm simultaneously recording. I've done this once before with Lucian, my son, and a good friend of mine recommended a microphone. So I bought a microphone, like a little lapel mic, um, and I bought it off of Facebook Marketplace. I met a woman in a parking lot, and she gave me or sold me or accidentally, however you want to carve it, one that's compatible with iPhone, and I have an Android. So I ordered a new one through Amazon, and then I'm gonna switch them out and just send that one back. Judge me if you want, I don't care. I'm getting my little $30 back. So that's charging right now. Hopefully the audio is good enough. I've actually got the phone propped up on like the back of the couch. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But for the recording purposes, if I keep looking here, it's just because I am not a producer. I am not a tech person. I am just trying to have fun and record some sort of valuable content for listening and viewing pleasure. Met with a girlfriend earlier today, which was really, really nice. We've had these storms roll through today, so I was just getting to her house when the storm started. So while we're kind of talking about everything, there's this pretty incredible thunderstorm happening outside, and it's one of those April showers. It's not terribly cold in um, Maryland, where I live right now, so it kind of leaves like this hazy, dreamy fog, which was really nice. It was cool to listen to. Um, so we talked about a lot of stuff, and I needed to eat. When I was on the way home, I'm like, do I stop and get something, real quick? And I'm like, no, you have food at home. Just go home, eat what you've already paid for. It's right there. You just might have to wait an extra 20, 30 minutes. So I've been trying to do that more. Not go to the grocery store, buy the groceries, and then still go to Chipotle. So guilty. I do it way too much. Um, so I kind of have like this energy where I'm like, okay, I want to record. I want to record. When I got to her house, that was our initial plan, was to record, and then things just kind of took a turn where we didn't, and that's okay. This podcast is not meant to be very structured by any means, but I knew I wanted to record because I haven't for a couple of weeks. So I am trying to produce at least one new episode a week. I'm failing at that, by the way. I do like one every 2 to 3 weeks. And that's okay. Like, I have very little judgment towards myself about it. It's supposed to be fun and just a way to help and hopefully reach others. So I get home. Um, I thought my son was going to be away at work tonight. He's on his way home. So I feel like this, not anxiety, but kind of like I need to record before he gets home. Um, Definitely needed to eat before I recorded. So while I'm wrapping up the food, I still haven't completely. Oh my god, this dog. So I have two dogs. The one who's whining is 16, and he is bullied by the 4-year-old who is laying here blocking the walkway. Hey, bully! And he's acting like he can't hear me. Hey, move your booty. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. So now he comes because the other one's not blocking. Good Lord. Hi. Hi. I wasn't sure what the topic was going to be for today. And, I was just rinsing the dishes off, and it's like, just let it be organic. I mean, I always like to have some sort of, idea, just so I'm not like all over the place, because I'm already so all over the place. Um, but what's coming up is reflection. My friend and I talked a little bit about, like the struggles that we have, and um, those demons, or those, negative thought processes, or the old narrative that you tell yourself in your head, and how that still can kind of fuck you up sometimes, even though we've done so much work. We've done so much work. And then something else will happen, and you're like, oh, I guess I gotta work on that again. And it can be frustrating. Hang on, I gotta let this dog out. It can be frustrating because you feel like, even though we know this isn't the case when we do this spiritual work, yeah, there's never an end point. Even though you've already worked on that, we're never finished. And I think that's a good reminder of the human experience and our life manifest in a physical form. We are a work in progress. So I don't care if like you have exponentially grown your salary and you're now at, 6 figures, and you want to grow more. That's wonderful. But it's never done. There's always work to be done. Same thing with the spiritual side, the emotional side, the healing the inner child. When new things crop up, and it usually crops up in other people, like something else will trigger you because someone else behaved a certain way or said a certain thing, and it ignites something in you. It's just a reminder that that still needs a little bit of attention, because as we're ready to, how to say this, when we're ready to work on it, that's when it comes up. So if we're in fight or flight mode, for example, you're not in a space to deal with childhood trauma, or that's just one example, or things that you're trying to change in your psyche or emotionally, like you're not there. So it's very difficult if you're not in a safe space. So I've gotten to a point where, like, the people that piss me off the most, I'm not always there. Like, I'm not trying to front. Like, I get angry and frustrated, but most of the time I am grateful for the experience, because it's a situation or person that's showing me there's still more work to be done. Very rarely is it like everything is hunky-dory and we're in that upswing of life. We don't grow there. We don't change there. That is not when it happens. It happens when we are in the mud and going through it. And for me, that's the most lessons I've learned have been when I am going through it. So, reflecting, it's crazy because I look back, and those times where I absolutely thought I wasn't going to get through it, those were turning points. Those were stepping stones. Those were lessons that I potentially learned from and didn't put myself in that same situation again. I brought up to my girlfriend when I was chatting with her, if you can pause for a minute and imagine looking at your 15-year-old self and telling her where you are now, she wouldn't have believed it. Like, no way would you have really thought, unless you have like a delusional belief, which I think is a healthy frame of mind as well. Sometimes if you have a goal, you have to believe it to the point, even if it seems crazy, that it manifests, and it doesn't happen overnight. But looking at your 15-year-old self like, yeah, you're going to be okay. This is where you're going to end up. Oh, now here we go. It's doing that thing it does. I'm recording the podcast as well. So hold on, this has got a time out. Okay, so that's the opener. So then we'll go to the main chapter and then we'll record here. Perfect. And sorry if you're listening to this, I'm not editing. I'm just kind of recording, going with the flow. Some of you may know I'm a yoga instructor as well. So with classes, a lot of times I will have a theme and go in and read the room and show up authentically with what I'm currently experiencing and kind of use those two as the guide of what the class will be. So I kind of read the room, read the energy, and then also factor in where I am, and the class is born, with the backdrop of the theme. So that's kind of what I'm doing with this podcast today, and what it seems to be evolving into is I'm not trying to overthink it. I'm not trying to make it something perfect. I'm not doing it for money. I'm not doing it for accolades. I'm not doing it for any external recognition. I'm doing it because it helps me, one. Two, in some way, shape, or form, I hope that my experience helps one other person, even if it's just for a comedic value that you listen to this or watch this. That's cool too. So looking back, my 15-year-old self, I mean, I give her a lot of credit. I really do. I give her a lot of credit because she had to grow up quick. She had to figure things out on her own quick. And it was all in the midst of being a 15-year-old girl. So that in and of itself can be very challenging. And then not having a strong guiding force to the degree that there were definite yes and no's. Like, there weren't a ton of rules. And I think combined with my personality, which was very much, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, it made it challenging for the family members who were bringing me up. So I'm not blaming or pointing fingers by any means. A lot of it was my own doing with having to figure things out on my own. Some of it wasn't, and that's okay too. So, my God, to look back at my 15-year-old self, what would I say? Like, you are worth so much more than you even realize. Hang on. My 16-year-old dog also can't walk up the steps without emotional support. He needs you to stand, or me to stand behind him, because he's afraid he might fall backwards down the 4 steps. So hang on. Okay, we're back. We're coming. Okay, we're back. I always felt like I was different. I always felt like everyone else had all the answers, and I didn't. I feel like I was absent on that day of school. I went to school, the same school, 1st through 8th grade, and most of the kids, or at least I felt like this was my filter, most of the kids that I went to school with lived in a different neighborhood, and their houses were bigger and more expensive, and their parents drove different cars. So I always felt different, and definitely felt lesser than. No matter what I presented externally, those were my internal feelings. So when I was, I guess, 13, I discovered external things that made me feel different. And I enjoyed the way that they made me feel. So I did them a lot. And I did them to the point where it changed the direction my life was going in. I dropped out of high school when I was sophomore, so at the end of my sophomore year. I wanted to choose this other lifestyle where I didn't have to think, I didn't have to feel these feelings anymore. Um, and it's just, it blows my mind, first of all, that I survived myself. Second of all, that I'm where I am today. Like, I have an amazing life. And I don't say that to boast, but I say that as a testimony to how much things can change when we have a subtle shift, when we're willing to do the work. See, very often we're looking for these external goals, whether it's the increase in your salary or the money in your bank account or the house you live in or the spouse that you have, um, as external validation. Either, you feel better when you have these things, or it's how you think other people perceive you, or a combination of both. But you cannot expect these external goals without being willing to do the internal work. So you have to be able to put in the internal work to shift who you think you are. I'll say it again. You have to be willing to put in the internal work to shift who you think you are. Because if you're not willing to change, then you're stagnant. So if you're stagnant, then you're not creating, and you're spiritually dead. Like, your heart is still beating, blood is still pumping through your body, air and oxygen, still in the lungs. The organs are working, however, the spark is gone. And that can be a scary place to be. It can be very difficult when you are there to remember there's another side to it. So it blows my mind. It doesn't blow my mind, but it's hard to, I guess it's hard to wrap my head around how I get to those other places. The external feel different, all that kind of stuff. I don't do that and haven't done that for a long time. But, mood and depression, those kinds of things, I was there not that long ago, as some of you know. So just recall, if you can, here are some pointers. Like, here's how to determine, are we more in the problem than in the solution? Okay? We all have problems. I don't care who you are. And money does not determine this. The way you look does not determine this. Where you work or where you live, your education level. We all have problems, period. Celebrities, everyone from your next door neighbor to your parents to your children. Everyone has problems. But observing within yourself how much you're speaking these problems. Like, when you chat with your friends, are you talking more about your problems or the joys of your life, the new things that you're doing? And if you are focusing more on the problem, then just, it's a quick switch. It doesn't take a lot, but how can you get in the solution? Watching the male person, sorry. So it's very easy to stay in the problem, but that can be a scary place, especially when you're all in your head about it. So when we're just replaying those problems that we had in our head, that can be a really scary place. I think it's important to notice it, to observe it, and to even observe patterns, but you have to be willing to change who you think you are. And that is an ongoing process. That is a work of art that is never done. We are constantly evolving. And I think another way that you can determine, like, have I maybe lost that spark? Have I lost that lust for life, that hunger to want to learn new things? If you don't pause when there's a beam of light shining across your floor, if you don't pause when you see a child laughing, or the first birds of spring, when you don't pause and appreciate that, or even see that there's something to appreciate, I think there's something to consider there. And this is not a judgment. I do not want anyone to take this and, internalize it and judge it. I am not judging by any means, but I think it's really important because the magic has never left. It's always been there. It's the filter through which we see. So just, it is all around us all the time. When we choose to recognize it and it's a subtle shift in the mind, then things can perpetuate from that. So you can perpetuate more of the problem or more of the solution. It's, hold on. Okay, there we go. Hang on. Sorry. I told you I'm not techie. Yeah, so, when we stop and see, are we more in the problem or more in the solution? Either one that you give your energy to is going to create more of that. It's going to manifest more of that. And it can be scary. It can be uncomfortable because you're doing something different that you've never done before. We could be tapping into uncomfortable feelings. Looking back, I am a sensitive, and I am, I don't want to say susceptible because it sounds like a negative connotation, but I absorb other people's energy depending on how protected I am in that moment. So when I'm around a lot of negative energy or just a big variety of energy, it can really mess me up if I don't balance out. So looking back to my little baby 15-year-old self, 16-year-old self, 17-year-old self, thank God I survived the things I was doing to myself. But I think I was doing them because it was a way to cope. It wasn't just, family belief systems or family, patterns that were coming up, and just, my parents doing the best that they can with what they were giving emotionally and what they received from their parents, but also just who I am as a person. I didn't understand what I was feeling. So it was a way to kind of like, cool, I'll do this and then I don't have to feel that anymore. So now I use it as a gift, but I do know it's not to be abused, and it's not to be given so freely that it depletes me. So I have to mindfully show up before I even leave my house. Like before I even leave my house, I have to decide how I'm going to show up. And it's a choice. I can stay in the solution or I can stay in my own problems in my own head. And what that does is it blocks me off from the flow of creativity and love. At the end of the day, I don't care who you are. Everyone wants to be loved and accepted. And the people that are the fastest and the first ones to say, I don't need anyone, I'm good, I can do it on my own, are the ones that need it the most. And I know that because I was that person for years. So it takes time. It took me time to get there, but we all innately want to be loved and accepted. Now, that doesn't mean we need to look externally to receive that. We don't need to just put a figure in place because we need to feel loved. You can love yourself. That's a whole other episode. Until that person that you feel fulfilled with and feel safe with comes along. And until then, you have the power to heal and do that for yourself. And that'll be another episode too. Let me write that down real quick because I'll forget. Cool. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast where we talk all things the tea and how we get through it with a bit of honey. Until next time, guys, have a great one. I love you. Bye.